Let me tell you about Carmen, faithful, devoted, and full of hope. For years, she was one of the most committed members of Holy Way Christian Church. Every Sunday, Wednesday night Bible study, prayer meetings, you name it, Carmen was there. And it wasn't just her. Her two close friends, Andrea and Lynette, were always by her side. These three were inseparable, and they had one thing in common. They were all praying for a financial breakthrough. Now, Carmen wasn't alone in life. She had a wonderful husband, James, and two beautiful kids, Marcus and Ella. But money had always been tight. You know how it is, two incomes, bills piling up, kids growing out of their clothes faster than you can blink. It felt like they were constantly juggling, trying to make ends meet. Carmen had dreams. She wanted more for her family, a better house, better schools for the kids, maybe even a family vacation for the first time in years. But it seemed like every time they started to save a little, something would come up. The car would break down, or there'd be an unexpected medical bill. It was frustrating, exhausting even, but Carmen wasn't the type to give up easily. She and her friends, Andrea and Lynette, had a small prayer group. Every week after church, they gather at someone's house, usually over a cup of tea, and just pray. They prayed for each other's needs, for their families, but most importantly, they prayed for God to come through in their finances. They believed, deep down, that God would make a way. Andrea had been praying for a promotion at work, and Lynette was hoping to get her small business off the ground. Carmen, though, she was praying for a job, any job that would give her family some breathing room. They prayed fervently, encouraged each other, and believed together. Even when months turned into years, they kept the faith. God's timing is perfect, they'd say to each other, even though sometimes, deep down, it felt like his timing was taking longer than expected. At home, things were tough. James, her husband, was a good man, supportive, loving, and hardworking. But he felt the weight too. He worked long hours as a mechanic, but no matter how hard he worked, it seemed like they were always just one paycheck away from trouble. Carmen could see the exhaustion on his face. There were nights they'd lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, whispering about how they were going to get through the next month. It wasn't easy, but they were in it together. Then, one evening, after another prayer meeting with Andrea and Lynette, Carmen's phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. Now, usually she wouldn't answer, but something told her to pick up this call. And there it was, the answer she had been praying for. It was a job offer. Not just any job, but a position at a marketing firm that paid way more than she ever expected. It felt like a dream come true. She was speechless, overwhelmed with joy. She immediately called James, and they both laughed and cried over the phone, thanking God. That Sunday, she walked into church with a spring in her step. During testimony time, she stood up and shared the amazing news. The whole congregation erupted in applause, and her friends Andrea and Lynette were overjoyed. It felt like a turning point, like God had finally opened the floodgates. She had gone from struggling to being blessed, and it felt so good. Life started to change quickly. With her new income, they were able to catch up on bills, pay off debt, and even start planning for a family vacation. Carmen could finally buy those little things she had always wanted but could never afford. New clothes for Marcus and Ella, a new car for James, and even a few things for herself. She wasn't rich, but for the first time in years, she could breathe. But something else changed too, slowly, almost unnoticed at first. With her new job came more responsibilities. Late nights at the office, weekend deadlines, and business trips started to pile up. At first, Carmen made sure to still attend church, but as time went on, it became harder and harder to make it. I'll just miss this one Sunday, she'd think. God understands. Her prayer group with Andrea and Lynette, that started to take a back seat too. She still loved them, of course, but she was just busy. There was always another email to respond to, another client call, another work event. Carmen reassured herself that it was just a busy season, and once things settled down, she'd get back to church and her prayer group. But that season stretched on, and before she knew it, weeks turned into months. James noticed the change too. He missed the old Carmen, the one who would wake up early on Sundays to get the kids ready for church. Now, she was more focused on work, and if she wasn't working, she was too tired to do much of anything. They'd have little arguments here and there, but Carmen would always brush it off, telling him, "It's just temporary. I'm doing this for us." Her friends, they noticed too. Andrea and Lynette still met up to pray, but Carmen hadn't joined them in ages. They'd call, text even dropped by the house, but Carmen was always busy. It wasn't that she didn't want to see them, but her priorities had shifted. Church had shifted. God had shifted. And then came the day that turned everything upside down. It was a Friday afternoon, and Carmen was finishing up a project when her boss called her into his office. She didn't think much of it. She had been doing great at work, getting praise left and right. But when she sat down, she could feel something was off. Her boss looked uncomfortable, and after a few awkward minutes, he said those dreaded words, "Carmen, the company is downsizing." She felt like the floor had just dropped out from under her. Downsizing? What did that mean for her? She had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, and now, in the blink of an eye, it could all be gone. Her mind raced. How would they pay the bills? What about the car? The house? The kids? She felt panic rising in her chest, and for the first time in a long time, she realized just how much she had been relying on this job for her sense of security. It wasn't God she had been trusting. It was her paycheck, her position. That night, Carmen went home, barely able to speak to James. She felt like everything was crumbling around her. The stress of possibly losing her job was suffocating. She tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep, and finally, around 2 a.m., she got out of bed and dropped to her knees. It had been a long time since she had prayed like this. Tears streamed down her face as she asked God to forgive her. She realized how far she had drifted, how she had let the blessings pull her away from the one who had blessed her in the first place. That Sunday, Carmen went back to church. She didn't care how long it had been, or how awkward it might feel walking through those doors again. She knew she needed to be there. As she walked in, she felt this overwhelming sense of peace, like she had finally come home. During worship, she cried like she hadn't cried in years. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about her heart. She knew she had been wrong to let the blessings get in the way of her relationship with God. She had put her trust in the wrong things, and now she was humbly coming back, asking God to take first place in her life again. After the service, Andrea and Lynette rushed over to her, hugging her tight, tears in their eyes too. "We've missed you," Lynette said. Carmen smiled through her tears and said, "I've missed you guys too. I'm so sorry." Carmen repented that day, not just for letting her job take over her life, but for pushing away the people who had stood by her through thick and thin. She realized that no amount of success or money could ever replace the peace and security that comes from God alone. And you know what's amazing? Her job ended up being safe. The department downsizing didn't affect her after all. But this time, Carmen didn't take it as a sign to go back to her old ways. She knew this was a second chance. From that day forward, she committed herself to putting God first. Whether she had a lot or a little, God would always be her priority. Carmen, Andrea, and Lynette started their prayer group again, stronger than ever. And this time, Carmen made a promise. She wouldn't let the blessings pull her away from God. Her family, they noticed the change too. James was grateful to have his wife back. The one who put God first, who loved deeply, and who knew that no matter how high they climbed, they'd always be standing on the foundation of their faith. So, my friend, Carmen's story is a reminder to us all. It's easy to get caught up in the blessings, to let the gifts take the place of the giver. But at the end of the day, no amount of success or financial security can replace the peace and joy that come from a relationship with God. No matter where you are in your journey, remember to keep God at the center of your life, in the good times and the tough ones. If you've ever found yourself in Carmen's shoes, let this story be your guide to finding your way back. Sometimes we get so caught up in the blessings that we forget the one who blessed us in the first place. But the good news is God is always there, waiting for us with open arms, ready to take us back, no matter how far we've drifted. If you've ever found yourself in Carmen's shoes, let this story be a reminder. Don't let the blessings pull you away from the blesser. Keep God at the center, in the highs and the lows, and trust me, He'll always be there for you.
Okay, my YouTube family, you have watched the video. What do you think about it? What do you have to say about it? I really appreciate you taking time to watch it. Please like this video, comment about the content, subscribe to see more thought-provoking videos the minute they're published. You'll have first dibs, okay? If you find value in it, then please share. That's how you do your part. Thank you so much for taking time to hang with me, hanging with her family. May God bless you and your family abundantly as you walk under an open heaven. I love you, but Jesus loves you more. God bless you. See you next time. Bye.